And we're back. Hello, everyone. Thank you for being patient through the technical difficulties. We are here with Crossroads of Cognizance, where every week we come together and we talk about what's going on the East Coast, what's going on the West Coast, and everything in between from an energetic place, from a magical place. Both Katrina and I are practitioners of different kinds, but yet similar faculties. And we have a lot to say in terms of supporting you guys, helping ourselves, and bringing balance to this energetic space. So, with all of that, I'm your one of your hosts, Dahlia Rose. I'm over here on the East Coast with Crystal Cognizance, where we do energy work, classes, and healing sessions, as well as readings. And I guide my local community to their best selves and their life purposes. And with me as my co-host, I have.
Hi, I'm Katrina Raspold, co-owner of Crossroads Metaphysical Store, and we do witch shit. I got nothing. We just do a lot of witchy stuff. And you know what's tripping me out? Okay, so this is what's weird. So look at Dahlia and how beautiful she is and how glowing she is and all of that. So like apparently I am such a spiritual black hole right now that my whole countenance is dark. And look at this. I've got a light right here. Like it's on me. Like it's in my eyes. Kill it. Watch. You'll see it. Look. See it? Right there. It's like right in my face. And I'm still this sad, pathetic, dark hole of spiritual goo.
Oh
And
no.
I'm not even sure why I've got this darkness around me like fucking Hades or something. So anyway, let's do it.
Shadow phases of the moon, I guess.
I got nothing, man.
So this week has been a really interesting one. You know, there's been a lot of it's been another shifting of sands time. I mean, on a global platform, I won't bring politics into this, but from a global stage to personal ones, they're often not separate. And I know you're seeing it in clients, I'm seeing it in clients, and our personal lives for sure. I mean, the shifts and changes in personal relationships and just life in general. So with that, I thought we could cover what would actually support us through those circumstances. You had really beautiful words to write about your personal events, Katrina, when we were talking last week, and so you mentioned sacred wisdom and guidance through finding those things through unexpected places. And so I thought we could start out there. I mean, how are you?
I must have still been under some really heavy anesthesia at that time. I do not remember anything wise coming out of my face hole last week. If it did, I'm honored and surprised and thrilled. Uh, I had quite a magical mystery tour with a surgery that I had, which is why I wasn't able to broadcast last week. And it just continues. I mean, you can't make this shit up. The stuff that's happening in my life right now just defies all kinds of explanation. And I just, I don't have words. I don't have feelings. I don't have anything about it anymore. I'm just sitting here wide eyed, just watching the dumpster fire happen. Um, but that's kind of what my admission into the hospital was last Tuesday.
Hmm.
So we're now, I guess, 9 days out, and it was all sorts of weird stuff that happened. Like, because of COVID restrictions, Eric could not come with me for my surgery. He had to just leave me at reception and walk away, which is difficult for us because we're very close. But they still made him take a COVID test, and all he did was walk to the door and kiss me on the cheek goodbye and leave me. And still, they needed him to take a COVID test. And they're like, "Oh, you can go up with her." And he's like, "Oh, I can. I was told I couldn't." They're like, "No, you can." So he goes off and gets the deep, deep COVID test while I'm getting admitted. And I come back out from admissions and we're ready to go. And they're like, "Well, he can't go up." And so they just sent him on his way. And it was just weird shit like that from the beginning. So that where I had gotten psyched up for a surgery and ready, I had not adequately prepared for how demanding emotionally it was going to be to do that. I thought I was just going to go in and have a surgery and leave. And all sorts of weird things happened during that surgery. For instance, the woman was checking me into the surgical ward, a woman named Pretty, very nice lady, and she was putting an IV in my hand. Now, I've never had an IV in my hand before. It was always in my arm. I've never had an IV hurt so much in my life. And it hurt until they took it out that night. It never stopped hurting. But while she's putting it in, she asked me for my birth date. And they do that several times. I must have been asked my birth date probably 12 times in the few hours I was at the hospital as some sort of, are we sure this is you thing? And because they look at your bracelet and ask your birthday. And so she asked my birthday and she goes, "Oh, Virgo." And I thought, "Oh, my people are here." And I was like, "Yeah." She goes, "I'm a Virgo too." And we started talking about that. And just out of nowhere, she starts telling me how her son has a curse on him. And I'm like, "Well, as it happens, I happen to be in the business." And so we started talking back and forth about that. And I'm thinking, I'm here in the hub of Western medicine, like the public hospital, and somebody is sitting here talking to me while they're putting an IV in me about their kid having a curse. How does this stuff happen? So then I get upstairs. My doctor's delayed because she had to step in on another surgery that went long. So my surgery's already like pushed out, pushed out, pushed out. I haven't eaten. I've been fasting, but that's okay because I'm good at fasting. And then they got hands on the bed. They're rolling the gurney into the operating room. And this fella that was my nurse says, "Well, she doesn't have a COVID test in her records." And I had taken the COVID test at another hospital that was on Tuesday. I'd taken it on Friday, and it's within the same system. So it should have come up, and it didn't. And they just then noticed when we were on the way to the OR. So everything came to a screeching halt because I did not have a COVID test. And I was just done. It was just like, I'm having a surgery I didn't want to have in the first place. And my husband could be with me and then he couldn't. I haven't eaten since 8 o'clock last night. It is now 3 o'clock, 3:30. And now you're telling me that because y'all can't find my COVID test, my surgery might not even happen. So plus I'm over an hour away from home. So they finally told me that what they were going to do is do another of the deep, deep COVID tests. And when that came back and they got the results, they would do my surgery. So I was just done. So
Yeah.
I'm in the operating room, like literally in the operating room. And they send somebody up to do the COVID test. And I had to get her to stop between nostrils because it was just, this particular one was just super painful. They're always really uncomfortable for me. This is just way painful. And so finally she finishes what she was doing and I just burst into tears. I just was done. And the person that was taking care of me, a wonderful nurse named Sever, um, he was trying to engage me in conversation. And finally I said, I appreciate what you do. I don't want to talk. Just do whatever you do over there. And so I was sitting there and I just thought, that was uncalled for. That was really
Mm.
terrible. So I reached back out to him and I said, "Look, Sever, I'm really sorry. I shouldn't have snapped at you like I did. I apologize for that." And he came over, put his hand on my arm and started talking. And it was insane the stuff he was talking to me about. He talked to me about how he and his wife had escaped from Romania and that she developed acute appendicitis in Austria. And they had no money. They couldn't speak the language and they were scared. She's in enormous pain. And they finally got her to a hospital. He said the people there treated her in such a way that he knew that what he wanted to spend the rest of his life doing was to show compassion to people who were in that situation. And he had been a cabinet maker in Romania and talked about how the wood felt under his hands and how much he loved to make the cabinets. but he had become a cabinet maker. And then he talked about some of the books he had read on mind expansion and on energy and on how we affect other people with what we do. And I happened to say to him, I feel like I had an opportunity to be kind to you when you were kind to me, and I failed myself and I failed you and I failed the universe when I did that. He said, what failure really is an ignorance of the situation. And he said, I don't say that in an insulting way, but anytime we fail, it is only because we were ignorant of some aspect of what was happening. And he said, you were ignorant of the amount of energy it was going to take for you to do what you're doing today. And that's not your fault. And so he said, I always just know that when there is a breakdown somewhere, it's because somebody was ignorant of some part of what happened. And that really stuck with me. It was pretty amazing. And then he refreshed his screen, and my COVID tests were there, and everything started moving very, very fast after that. But it was a real lesson to me that, I think of myself and the healings that I do as being so removed from Western medicine, as being something that, not is in defiance to Western medicine, but it's just outside of the scope of interest of Western medicine. And that I don't belong there. There's no place for that. And yet, the people I spent the most time with while during my 8 hours or 9 hours or so that I was in the hospital were immersed in conversation about basically the very thing that I do, energy movement and curses and astrology and things like that. And I thought, isn't that fascinating? And I thought how wonderful it would be if I've got probably 32, 33 people that ultimately will graduate out of the master healer class. And I thought how wonderful it would be if they could be having a conversation like that someday, to bring that peace and that compassion to another person. So that's really, I think, what I meant about that feeling that there's opportunity for spiritual wisdom everywhere you go, even in the most sterile and uber efficient um, technological places you can imagine, like a hospital.
Right. I mean, we talked, I think, on another show about how, of course, you, a magical person, would find the only magical people in a place like that, right? But what you said is true. I know through my doors have come, I mostly have therapists and counselors and government employees as clients. And I think about the things that we talk about, the ways in which we go forward in healing practices, and it's by no means so far fetched and woo woo that the real world can't access it. And we offer just as much of a therapeutic touch as those kinds of environments. So it was beautiful. My favorite part was Sever's quote,
Mm,
failure is an ignorance of the situation. And it moved me so much. I'm always looking for ways to reframe failure because it's such a huge
mm-hmm.
obstacle
It
for, I
is.
know, me and other people. So that was where I got stuck in the story. I thought it was perfect. So,
Well,
um,
and what is fascinating too is that, not to go too deep into Katrina's vagina here, but the surgery I was having was a DNC because of a very thick uterine lining. And I'm postmenopausal, so I shouldn't be developing uterine lining. And of course, I work energetically. So I just had a breast cancer scare as well. So I was able to, of course, figure out very quickly. It doesn't take you know, uh, Wayne Dyer to sit here and tell me that I'm having issues with my children. And I don't have an issue with the loss of my fertility, but my last child just moved out in July of 6, and I've been raising children for over 40 years, and not counting the 10 years I raised my mother's children before that, or excuse me, 6 years. And then on top of that, our home burned down, and we lived there for 17 years. We raised the last 3 of our kids there, and everything that equates to them being little is gone. Their
Mm,
little baby clothes that I saved, their baby books, their umbilical cords that I saved, all of that stuff is just gone, like it never existed. The 2 things Eric wanted to keep if we ever had to leave the house was our door frame with their heights on it, and that which, went all the way up because they grew from little boys to men in that house, and our stair railing that they touched every time they came down the stairs. And we got neither of those things. And so there's so much of my children's childhoods that's just now gone.
right.
And so I know that the uterine issues I'm having are, an extension of that grief. And yet the man who was taking care of me is named Sever.
Yeah. The irony.
So, yeah.
A wild a wild emotional ride for sure. I mean, let alone the physical implications and how much healing that takes, but the emotional toll and then the awareness of everything. You know, we talk often about how much awareness plays a role in these circumstances of healing. And it's like this is a very clear situation where awareness almost causes more pain before the healing process starts. And that would be something that I would offer our audience and reflect on myself. Like, hey, just because you have awareness doesn't mean it's going to go perfect. In fact, you're going to get the
Mm-mm.
storm before the calm, you know?
We get used to being in situations that we can manage energetically.
Hmm.
And we manage situations energetically for other people all the time. And so when you are adrift, and they had taken my phone, so I couldn't check in with Dahlia, I couldn't check in with Gladys, I couldn't check in with any of my touch points to say, hey, I'm spinning out. Can you put me back on track?
Yeah.
And so it was truly feeling alone and exposed in this environment and vulnerable. I have the same experience you have, Dahlia, in that the vast majority of my clients are nurses, and students, clients and students are nurses. They're social workers. They're child care providers. They are people who are involved in the care of others. And I've got some that are not, and that's not a rarity, but there is a predominance of therapists and other healers and
Yeah.
people that are, on that path of people care that come through. And so I'm used to that environment. I'm used to that setting. And I've got to admit, I was very disappointed in myself
Hmm.
and sad that I let that situation overwhelm me so much. And I have more medical issues coming up, and already I feel overwhelmed, and I'm thinking, you know, how do I build that up? I feel like the novice now. So I'm just opening to any wisdom that comes my way in any shape or form, and trying to cut back on my energetic load, because of course this is not a good time for me to be in other people's energy when
Yeah.
I'm feeling off center. And so I really think that one of the topics that inadvertently comes into this conversation is healers knowing when to step back and not really going with the hero syndrome of having to still muster forth and fix everything and do everything and stay the course. Sometimes you just are not positioned to do that.
Right. I mean, if we're
Ah,
constantly
I got you
on
muted
the.
again. What happened?
Oh, can you hear me?
I don't know.
Oh, okay. Uh, it went out.
Hmm. Well, you
The
keep
technical
talking, you
issues.
juggle, because I hope they can hear you, because I
They
can't.
they can. The technical issues abound. Sorry, guys. But as Katrina was saying, with the um with healers needing to take a break, we go through these different stages. I remember when I first stepped into healing work, I was like, okay, I'm the novice, absorbing everything that I could. And then from that point, being in the healing field for about 5 years at that point, are we back?
I had to disconnect my Bluetooth headset. Apparently,
Okay.
it just can you hear me?
Yes.
Excellent. Okay, good.
um, but going into the healing field at first was the novice, and then I'd been in for about 5 years, and transitioning into my own practice unintentionally, completely unintentionally. My foundation was shaken and my safety was taken away, and I had to quickly come up with a space to do my own practice. And that put me back in the novice chair. I mean, even as a healer that had worked on probably about 500 people at that point, um, I went into my practice and was saying, like, hey, all I want to do is healing work. And I ended up with a storefront. And then I was like, okay, getting used to this, novice again. And then moving from that novice territory into, wow, these are different kind of issues. Like, people started coming to me with full blown curses and attachments and, serious, deep bodily trauma. As one of my specialties is working with people who are victims of sexual assault, I I was like, okay, here are all of my mirrors, and now novice again, because everybody processes that differently. So there's just so many novice points, and this start over oftentimes feels painful at first, and then there is, further down the road, because time means nothing, there's often a moment where we can say, okay, with the knowledge that I have, I know I can make something new, I can make something different, I can completely step back. I mean, retirement happens for healers too. And it's not something that I think we really talk about as a magical and healing community. And we instead think, oh, well, I'll just do this till I'm in the grave. And that's not true. Um, it's just not. And for you, Katrina, you've been operating not only as a healer, but as a teacher for all of those years. It almost is a double whammy of intense energy.
I
Um,
started my first class in teaching adult education when I was 18 years old.
oh, wow.
So I've been teaching for 42 years. And that was actually childbirth classes that I started teaching at 18
Wow.
after I had my second child.
Can you imagine? I can't.
Yeah.
Um, so I'm like a quarter of the way there as you. I'm 11 years in. so, so, still so much to learn. And I'm so grateful for the wisdom that comes from your experiences. I'm not grateful for the pain, but you have this way of reshaping and reframing the circumstance to where you continue to teach even without intentionally doing so. So I'm enormously
Mm.
grateful for you.
Well,
And
thank you. I'm grateful for you too.
this topic that we're talking about, on a smaller scale, I've been seeing in folks that have been coming to me for healing, and it having to do a lot with the shifts that are taking place in their life and how it impacts their root chakra as well as their solar plexus chakra, and how those shifting sands, we've talked about being fractured and shot into many different realities at one time, when there's indecision, when there is when the rug essentially gets pulled out from underneath you. But the other thing that was brought into a repeat awareness was how within the fissures and the cracks comes through the family trauma. So, Carolyn Mace is an amazing author. I think I've brought her up on the show before. Anything you could possibly want to know about chakras, healing work, starting with her wouldn't be a bad idea. And she talks about how the lower three chakras all have to do with ancestors, family, traditions, how you were brought up. So that's solar plexus, sacral,
Sounds that tracks.
yeah, and
Yeah.
root. And so folks are coming in and I'm watching energetically their root chakra fluctuate because they're thinking about moving, or,
Mm.
they're thinking about making some sort of transition. And when your root chakra is in fluctuation, you don't feel safe, you don't feel grounded. And in the expansion, there can be cracks where, like I said, the family trauma starts to come through. And so now it's not just, okay, should I move here? Should I move there? But a complete loss of confidence or a complete loss of identity as you identified with certain aspects that you were tied to in your foundation before. Now there's uncertainty. And it sounds like that was a lot of your experience too, Katrina.
I think it's really possible that that's the case. And, when you look at the physicality of the surgery I was having, it's all in those physical chakra locations.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And then when they cut into us physically, as you've said, as I've said, they cut into us energetically as well. And,
Hmm.
one can do energy work on a repeat basis, but there's still work to be done. There's still things to be
Hmm.
sealed. And, I think for a healer, it's almost of double importance and requires double the work because of how our energy is used to being. It's used to absorbing or supporting other things, and now there's tears in it, and so
Mm.
it's like it's like an open vacuum. So, um, go ahead.
No, I didn't have anything. I was just agreeing.
Yeah. So that was part of the trends that I was seeing, and um, my message here today being that if we are aware of certain things coming up, like say a move or a family event that may cause challenges like sick parents or other kinds of life changes that cause fluctuations in those chakras or damage those chakras in one way or another, we may have an opportunity to kind of track where we are with regard to our family trauma, because it's a constant healing process, as we've talked about on the show. So we could, check in. How is my relationship with my mother? Okay, well, it's balanced now, but is there anything that moves me to an emotion when I think of her, and then pay attention to that space? Not that you get to a place of unfeeling, but you certainly don't get unseated when you're in a more
Hmm.
balanced and healed place.
What's
Um,
interesting regarding that connection is that at the time that I was having that surgery, I
mhm.
was in the week that I actually outlived both of my parents.
Wow.
So I am now older than either of them ever were.
I mean, and by today's standards, that's even, I think, at their time was still a young time to maybe pass.
Absolutely.
So, wow. I mean, talk about your family connections and generational trauma.
Hmm.
So, even approaching thoughts like that, my one of my exes would tell me, hey, the men in my family didn't live past, what did he say, 40 or
Ooh.
45? Yeah, I was like, well, you're gonna have to fix that because right now we're together and we need to figure that out. Um, he's still alive, just to say that, but we're not together. But outliving your parents, it's it's it appears to me when you say that like a timeline stops and there's all this empty open building to take place, and
Hmm.
that feels scary, like the ground's gone, like you reach the cliff and it's like, okay, do I do the Indiana Jones thing and see if there's a step here, or do I not move? What do I do? um and we've talked about being ungrounded before, and some things that can make a difference in terms of walking, going outside, shifting things in the home. But sometimes, the largest thing that can make a difference is sleep. I think I've said that before as well. But this journaling project maybe, or if it's reflecting with your therapist or your healer, or whoever you have, friends, um, reflecting on those family instances that you're still connected to. What was going on with my mom? What was going on with my dad? Hey, did I outlive them at the point? That's incredible. And, um, you know, who am I in proximity to my siblings, even? I know friends that are going through sibling challenges as well. And I mean, overall, what we've said in the show is having patience with self and understanding that that patience will disappear, and then you've got to find it again, some way, shape, or form. Hopefully, you have community to reinstill that. But if not, I think there's space to reflect on times when you felt more confident and try to breathe that in. That's how I usually explain to folks is, go back to the most confident point in your life and just sit there. What were you talking about? What were you thinking? What made you feel most secure? And then continue to breathe that in as much as possible. And you probably got to do that several times a day, not to give you some woo-woo approach that magically works and all of a sudden you're better. These things are a lot about repeat circumstances. So, um, in all of that, we're talking about so much magic. And I thought I would be, uh, I don't know, a little bit of an instigator by posting an article on our page. Hopefully, some of you guys got to take a look at it, but if you didn't, we will here at Crossroads of Cognizance go over it for you.
So
Um,
we need a little bit of lead in here for
yeah.
those who are watching who don't know the dynamic necessarily off screen of Dahlia and I, which is remarkably similar to our dynamic on screen. Um, she shot me this link. Now I had a stupid busy morning. I was just warp 7, hair on fire, ass a catching. I mean, I was just moving. And so I get this link that's like, I kind of want to talk about this article in our in our broadcast, and I was like, okay, homework, cool. So at 10 minutes till broadcast, I was just finishing up reading the article, and I didn't know what to do with the feelings I was having because I thought Dahlia was sharing this article in such a way as to say, look at what this brilliant woman pointed out. I'm going to be implementing all of these points into my relationship, you know, sort of paradigm. And I need you to sign off on this, Katrina. And that's what happened in my head when I'm looking at it going, this woman is insane. And I'm gonna have to let Dahlia know that I'm not digging her guru here. And then you can continue from there. You pick up the
fortunately,
story.
Fortunately, I was not sending it to her for that reason.
Woo!
This author is not my guru. So the website, I had an appreciation for the website because they will post interesting things like thought provoking things. I won't go into detail because you can always check them out on your own. Some of the things are a little clickbaity, but for the most part, it seems like they're in a positive direction. So the title of the article is "The Magical Habit You Must Break if you want a relationship." I'm sorry, the magical habit you must break if you want a truly great relationship. Now, I'm always interested in these articles that are tied this way because it seems to give you a dose of like this, here's this magic pill and your relationship issues will go away. And we're human, they'll never go away. So but I wanted to click on it, and reading through it, I was struggling, and so that's why I actually sent it to Katrina, because I was like, I'm having a hard time with this, and I need somebody who is objective to tell me if I am, say, taking this personally, or if this article seems a little off. Um, so you heard the title, "The Magic Must Break in order if you want to have a truly great relationship. So the author goes over about four things you can do. And the magical habit that she talks about breaking is magical thinking, and that was not where I thought the article was going at all. I thought, okay, what is it like? Passive aggressiveness, or something that substantially ruins relationships. And this person went on a psychological tirade about how damaging it is to think magically about loving scenarios. And so I wanted to bring that on the show. I wanted to give it to our audience because of a number of things that we'll talk about after we go over each point. So, the author talks about first how magical thinking is a barrier to finding true love. Now, where to begin?
Wow, we could do a whole segment just on that.
Right.
Because I mean, the level of offensiveness in this article, I couldn't even begin to qualify. For one thing, she talks to us all. This is something we would find in Cosmo. So
Yep.
we're not talking
How to
about
please
this.
your man.
We're not talking about this this article coming from scholarly sources. I
No.
get that, but it was just offensive, and it acts like everybody who incorporates magical thinking into their engagement of the world is just living in Disney princess land.
Very
And
superficial.
it was just troubling, and it was offensive, and I felt like she never actually did identify what the one habit was you needed to break. She just started shit talking. And that's a throwdown right there. That's just not good. And I'm also a little bit corrupted because of my time, my many years that I was a journalist for Pathos Pagan. And
Hmm.
Pathos Pagan, like a lot of hoity toity kind of online sources, is very specific about how you write your articles.
Mm.
And I get this person had a word limit. I get that this person had to have very specific headings that are clickbaity. And then under that heading, they had to have a particular number of words. And the way that articles have to be architected it's maddening. It's one of the reasons I quit writing for traditional journalism online. So I get all of that. But this was just stupid and ill informed and a barrier to finding true love. How blanket is that? And how
Right.
offensive is that?
I mean, you're going after people's viewpoints and the way that I mean, it's basically what anybody would do to denigrate a religion or somebody's belief system, and just file it because of magic. I mean, later on in the article, she goes on to talk about Disney and how Disney must have given us all these fantastic ways of seeing things. And I've made that comment on the show about, oh well, I hate that Disney gave me these ideas.
Mhm.
But it is magic that actually created a bridge to true love. It shouldn't be, it seems like this author really took an approach of like cross-pollinating magic with toxic positivity.
Right, I
You know,
agree.
if you're the magical practitioner who's like, nothing goes wrong, everything is positive, and if something bad happens, it's your fault because you did it in another life and you're paying for it now, or this person is your soulmate and they should be your everything even though they're physically abusing you, then that's not magical thinking.
Well, and also under this point of a barrier to finding true love, she goes on to talk about how it keeps you from showing up in your authentic self, that it keeps you from truly ever knowing the other person, and that you cannot cast a spell to make someone love you. And you know, I agree with the last point for the long term, certainly.
Right.
You can definitely cast a spell that causes somebody to turn their eye to you or to notice you more. But no, the love that you get from any type of love spell, all magic has an expiration date. And
Right.
it's probably going to happen before you're at the altar. But
Right.
the thing that about not showing up with your authentic self. I mean, magic is part of my authentic self. That's the part most people have trouble bringing to the table when they meet somebody is saying, "Hey, there is this part of me. I talk to things that aren't there. Are you cool with that?" I burn candles all the time. You're going to need to get used to that.
Right.
And so that is part of who you are authentically, and their reaction to that is part of their authentic self. And those are things you need to know moving forward. So I think if anything, magic accentuates. Now, facade, if she's talking about glamoury and facade, that's one thing.
Right.
But just to classify it under magical thinking was really short-sighted.
Absolutely. So, it gets worse. The article gets worse. Um, because her next point is it undermines potentially great relationships with unrealistic expectations. And pre-show, when Katrina was like, "What the hell did you just send me?"
Like we're all
uh,
so stupid.
pre-show, we were talking about how unrealistic expectations were around long before magical thinking. And those come from your parents mostly, and the examples that you had growing up of what relationships were and what love was. So,
They're taught, like, for instance, she says here, expectations turn potential princes into frogs and frogs into princes. And, cultural impressions do that. Psychological damage does that. That has nothing to do with magical thinking. Those are conditioned responses that have been put into a person through their own traumas and through their upbringing. It's not about magical experience, it's about who you are as a person and the thoughts and expectations that were created for and by you. So to blame that on magical thought is just that's really annoying.
and when you get into a magical practice, again, if you're doing your magical things, whether that is manifestation, actual magic, healing work, whatever, you're going to be faced with the need to balance and are you getting results from the work that you're doing? We've talked about that on the show. And if you're not if you're setting unrealistic expectations and not getting your results, then you will be forced to face yourself. You will be forced to release any thoughts that somebody else, because she mentions mind reading under that point as well, and unspoken expectations. And yes, there is a principle of, like, because I talk to people sometimes about telepathy. They're like, "Man, I can hear my partner's thoughts." Okay, that comes from a lot of signals and minute movements and things that you learn over time, or you instantly know because somebody else in your life did that. And then there's the energetic component of how it comes from your heart, and there's this aligned very short moment where you look at a person and you can sort of read them and what's going on.
Mhm. It's
But
also predictive text. Your
yes,
phone doesn't know you. Your phone is a piece of equipment. But your phone can figure out what you're going to say next based on the words you entered. And
yes.
I have been with Eric Rasbold for 25 years. I know what's going to come out of his mouth in almost any situation. And I watch people that I have in counseling go from, "Oh my God, it's so amazing. We just finish each other's sentences," to "This person interrupts me all the time." You know, the the ability to predict what that other person is gonna say, also not magically dictated. It's experience, and like you said, it's reading those minute signs that alert us to danger, that alert us to love, that alert us to all of these different feelings we have to respond to.
Right.
Oh, I just yeah.
So this author, whatever it so just to qualify here, the person that we're talking about who wrote this article, because I was so curious at this point. I was like, how could you be this, so it seems against magical thought, because we've all experienced magic in our lives, whether it was kids or otherwise. And I think in the world at large now, with the spotlight being on magic and manifestation and what you can do for yourself in terms of self improvement, um, surely this person must have come across magic in their life, and they're a life coach.
Mhm.
Um, so, so that was interesting.
Yeah.
But I digress. Maybe
And,
90 here nor
things
there.
like, what the saddest part is, there are some new little buds of truth in here. Some of them sound a little bit like a bad country song, but like, and holding on to the wrong person, you might miss out on the right one. But there are nuggets of truth in here that really could have been fleshed out into a fantastic article if the
Yeah,
purpose of the article had not been bashing magical thought as the villain here. There are plenty of villains we're looking at. Attraction, mutual interest, and autonomy are essential ingredients in a healthy relationship recipe, certainly.
absolutely.
That those things are not thwarted by magical thought processes. They're
Not at all.
accentuated. I'm
By
done.
authentic magic. Let's not pretend like there aren't individuals or practices out there that promise to give you the sweet spot on what you can bring into your life, and promise the world and under deliver. There are, but you can also do your research and advocate for yourself to see, like, okay, well, what am I getting into? You can do your research and find a practitioner that will put you on solid ground so that you
Mhm.
can have those enhancements instead
What
of just classifying all people.
What's troubling too, and I know that you have these same types of people coming to you, is I do get people that come to me that are approaching love from a magical mindset perspective, but they are very analytical about it. They're saying, "This is what I want in a relationship. This is what I'm looking for in a partner. I've thought this out. I have a list. I want to use candles and oils and mojo bags and pink rocks to draw this into me. Is this a solid plan?" Absolutely. Yes, it is. Why is that a bad approach to have ideals for a relationship?
Absolutely. And oftentimes it leads to that self-love place. I mean, I'm sure you say these things as well as me. Look at those things. How and where are you giving those to yourself? How are you, uh, how have you dated yourself over the last couple of days, weeks, months? And then, everything that you're asking a partner to bring you, you really have to be bringing yourself. You can't just expect somebody to show up and do that for you. And not from a place, if it doesn't feel like something that you can do or want to do, is it something that society gave you, that they said, okay, well, this is what makes a great relationship and you need to force your partner to have this? That she in the article, she actually classifies what I just said as magical thinking, and it's not.
Mm-mm. And you are
um
absolutely right that what the critical frame up here that is the problem is she's talking about toxic positivity,
she
which
is.
magical thinking people shun as being irrelevant and being ineffective, and it's not really a thing. It's a new age thing. It's not a thing that true magical people employ. They're not stupid. They live in the real world, and they are using real world magical techniques to accentuate what's happening with them. Her last thing about how it blocks radical and critical judgment. So basically, if you are working from a magical perspective, you just have no sense. You can't easily judge people. You become complacent while you wish and wait for your dreams to come true. I've got to be honest, I don't know any true magical practitioner who does that.
Right. Usually we are actually knee deep, eyeball deep in the trenches, trying to work through scenarios, even from a psychological perspective. I mean, yes, there are magical things that happen, but there's always balance. There's always the physical implications, the possibilities, the timing of the year. There's all these things to bridge the gap with everything, and this person is clearly in this article building walls around, well, if it's magical, it must not make sense, because that's how this community must be. And I have to say, maybe this is a person, I think I'm starting to realize that this person has never had magic in their
It
life
has to
or
be.
encountered it.
And that just that first line on number 4, not to be confused with optimism. So we're making a delineation there. Magical thinkers see what they wish to see and not what is. That line is so incredibly offensive. It discredits everything we do, because if we live in that world, how do you trust what comes out of our mouths to in any way be authentic? There's no discernment of who may be a good match based on reality and the natural progression of a healthy relationship. Boy, are we fucking dumb. I don't know how we walk and not run into walls without this journalist to tell us, where the door is.
It was, like I said, I wanted to kind of poke the bear here, and bring this article, because my concern was that when new people coming into this community, or exploring manifestations or different ways of being, read something like that, they will instantly feel shame or shut.
Yeah, yeah.
And if I didn't know who I stage of my journey, and I'm sure Katrina the same, we would go, wait a minute, we would start questioning, wait, is this right? And it's very clearly not. It's so short-sighted. It is clearly unresearched in magical practices. I think a good article and discussion can marry two things at the same time. But this person completely took one side and said, nope, the rest is wrong, because I can't touch it, I can't see it. And it's most of the world's problems right now at large, and again, aside from war type situations, are the untouchables. It is because we didn't look inside. We didn't know that magic could guide us down that path.
I agree. I also
So,
think it's very possible that this person actually wrote this article with a pint of ice cream and a bottle of scotch in front of them, with their come to me candle black at the top, and, you know, crying into it because they didn't get what they wanted. And so they're going to shit talk
ah.
people that do believe that it's possible.
Yeah, like I've seen people come this hard against magic when magic has negatively impacted their family.
Exactly.
Oh, well, my mom used to practice witchcraft, and it drew my father away from her, and I'm sorry, but that may not be the case. I mean, there were probably cracks in the foundation
Hmm.
beforehand, and when mom decided to pick up the magical tome and start chanting and burning candles, she looked a lot less appealing to somebody who didn't agree with those things.
And she may have seen a lot more clearly what was going on with some situations.
Right. So, there's always more to the story. This article is very short-sighted, but I kind of wanted to throw it in the show, because
Yeah,
it was like it was rough. It was prickly. And I
it
was
is.
like,
And we're
okay.
good at not shit talking people, but we can absolutely shit talk somebody when it's deserved.
Right, this is crazy. So, we'd love to hear your comments on the article, especially um, different perspectives. Maybe you agree with the article, and that is fine. Please bring those comments, because I would love to grow an understanding on this piece, but it doesn't seem like there is growth. This seems very much like an article that says, believe me or you're stupid. Um, like Katrina was mentioning, how do we get up and walk around? How do we clothe ourselves without, lighting a candle first? But we're at the end of the show, so your comments are really what's going to make this very interesting. I hope you all take a glance at it. I won't denigrate the website as a whole. Like I said, I think they have great content, but this was particularly challenging, this one article, and I'd love to see what you guys think. I know Katrina would too. So here we are at the end again, and we're all going through shifts and changes still. I mean, it feels like 2 years of this. And at this stage, one of the things that I have, one of the beautiful pieces of sacred wisdom that I found in Katrina's story was what Sever said, which was failure is an ignorance of the situation. I think this author had an ignorance of the situation.
Boy,
Um,
oh boy, and therefore failure.
And so we could all take that into the weeds with us and look at our life a little differently. Life isn't so serious, but at the same time, have patience, do what you can to manage, and you know come back next week. We'll have more to talk about, and we'll see you guys next time on
See you next
Crossroads of
time.
Cognizance. Bye, everyone.
Bye.